Happiness Warriors, welcome back. We've got Diane Kazer here, your hostess, back for another episode of Heart to Happiness, where the mission here is to realize that happiness is not outside of ourselves as much as it is inside of ourselves. And today, the man I'm going to interview, the doctor I'm going to interview, I think is one of those hot buttons. It's people see pain as a huge roadblock. And you may have listened to a lot of different interviews with me and various experts from all walks of life that likely have touched you. Dr. Ken touches me, but in ways that relieve pain. And so today we're going to talk about a big roadblock where people are, I think, and I'm going to let Dr. Ken talk about like the statistics and how common this is, but this is just one thing, and this is like minor compared to the bigger Band-Aids that people are having to use now to cover their pain up. People say, if only I didn't have this pain, if only I could move, if only I could leave the house. We've got all these amazing things in our lives that we can't take advantage of because we're in pain. And pain is the biggest roadblock to happiness. Now, it could be physical pain, it could be emotional pain. We've talked about the 5 main segments of pain points that your job through this, your homework, is to explore what areas of pain that you're experiencing the most. And I actually found Dr. Ken because I was experiencing a hell of a lot of physical pain. And it was probably about 5 years ago when I first moved to Orange County. Maybe it was a little bit longer than that. And as you guys know, I was a pro soccer player. And so I'm dealing with a lot of scar tissue and a lot of herniated discs and, chronic movements patterns that rendered me at this place where I felt like, gosh, if only this pain was gone, I could feel happy. So I did a Google search. I found Dr. Ken. He had great reviews. I went in to see him and I was just like, dude, this guy's rad. And as they say in, what movie was that? Step Brothers. They're like, you just find someone you like and you just are like, want to be friends? Cool. Did we just become best friends? Awesome. That's how I felt like when I walked into Dr. Ken's office and started talking to him. I'm like, did we become like just best health care practitioner friends? Because I just resonated so much with what he said, and he has helped me over the years get out of a lot of my pain. And in my mind anyway, I was able to be more happy for it. So Dr. Ken, a huge compliment. Welcome to you. Awesome. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much. And I have to say, it really was like that when we kind of first met, how we just had this connection that just really worked. And I like it so much because you're obviously, we're talking about happiness, but I think unfortunately a lot of us tend to focus on individual parts of something, and so a lot of people tend to go, oh, I've got this happiness problem, how do I fix my happiness? Oh, I need more happiness, or I need less sadness. But you would tend to find that there's this constellation of things that are contributing to or taking away from your happiness, and you look at that entire constellation, you can see all of that, and I think that's why we really connected. I tend to do that on the chiropractic side of things, on the pain management side of things, on the biomechanics and the athletic performance side of things, where I look at it from all perspectives and say, oh, it's not just a nerve problem. It's not just a joint problem. It's not just a muscle problem. It's all of it all together. And it's not just in the area where your problem is, it's probably stemming from something else that originated somewhere else and kind of worked its way to what brought you into the office initially. So you see that from the same exact perspective. And to do that with happiness, I've never seen anybody do that. So I very much commend you for doing this. I love that. And actually, I was thinking we'd be talking about some different things too, but just as you were talking, it already kind of sparked some inspiration in myself just now. And it reminds me of a story about how I actually kind of got involved with pain care in chiropractic, and that idea that you can make people's lives better through hands-on work. And it actually takes me back to when I was in high school. I actually worked for a chiropractor. I started my very first job, 15 and a half. I worked for a chiropractor. And I remember one particular patient. There's probably, of all the patients that we saw in that office over a 1.5 year period of time that I worked with, there's one in particular I can remember, and his name was Tony. And I remember that he would come in, and he'd come in at the very end of the day. He was the grouchiest people you'd ever run into. We didn't have anything. It didn't seem like we had anything in common. I really just did not care to be around him. I'm a high school kid. I wasn't as kind of open-minded as I am today. So it was just more of like, oh, great. How does this affect me? And it affects me negatively. So I didn't like Tony. But what was interesting is as he was receiving treatment from my mentor at the time, Dr. Gregson, his true personality started to come out. And what we'd find out was that he and I had a ton in common. We ended up having these fantastic conversations about, history and, like anthropology and like astrophysics and like all these like kind of crazy things that I like, that he also liked, that we had no idea we had this in common until his pain started to go away. And I actually mentioned this to Dr. Gregson one time, and he said, what you were seeing when he came in was his pain personality. And
Wow.
I was like, pain personality? Like, what's that? He said, well, you could imagine that if he has this pain and it's interfering with his life, he's not happy with that. And he's probably even putting on something of a brave face when he comes into our office, because we're just kind of acquaintances. We're not good friends. But he said, imagine if you can notice the difference between his pain personality coming into the office and just a slight bit of improvement with chiropractic care, and you can notice that as basically a complete stranger and somebody that hardly knows him. Imagine how much his wife is going to notice that he's probably not putting a brave face on. He's probably very much expressing his discontent with his pain, or his kids, or his close friends, or his coworkers, his boss, all those kinds of things. The people that are very close to them, that know them even better than we do, they're going to notice that pain personality shift even more than I noticed it at that time. And it was kind of eye-opening to me, because I just felt, oh, this is a place where people come in with ouchies, they get treated, and they leave without ouchies. I didn't see it as a big picture, kind of life-changing type event for patients that came in. And then this was one of the very first examples I saw where it actually was. So that's when I kind of first clued into happiness really ties in with that, with pain, and then pain can very much take that away. And it doesn't have to be just pain. There's actually several different kind of layers of that. Pain's the most obvious one, but it can also interfere with our performance, which can tend to really contribute to us being less happy with ourselves. It can also contribute to something that I call plasticity. It's actually kind of based on neuroplasticity, where the brain actually shapes itself around these habits that we have, these negative habits, these negative thoughts, these feelings of unhappiness, these feelings of not being as good as you could be, or actually pain. So all those things kind of go together, and they're all related to that sensory input that's pain. It's actually very complicated. It's not as simple as people tend to make it out. Like, oh, here's a pain impulse and this is what you feel. It's actually a lot more from a psychological perspective and a spiritual perspective, as well as a straight up kind of physiological perspective as well. So that's kind of when I first kind of experienced those things, and that to me was very eye-opening. And now I would say I've really kind of grown in my understanding of pain and how it influences people's personality, because I can recognize that immediately. It comes to me right away and say, okay, we're not dealing with just a physical issue here. It's now expanded beyond that into something that is now affecting your personality. It's affecting the wiring of your brain. It's affecting your daily life. It's affecting your relationships, and it's basically not making you happy. And no matter how good a job I could do as a chiropractor, if I don't also find the roadblocks towards that happiness, the patient's not going to be as great as they could be. They're not going to. We call it in our office the daring adventure. We have a painted wall that says life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all, and that's a quote from Helen Keller. And that's kind of how we look at it. We don't necessarily look at it as, oh, you come in with a problem and we want to then make that problem go away. We see it more as, what would you do if we made that problem go away? What would you do more in your life? What would you take on? What have you given up because of your pain? What have you given up because of your unhappiness? What if you just resigned yourself that, oh, I'm now old, or now I can't do this sport, or now I can't do this. What are those things that you're kind of giving up? And those become your daring adventures. So rather than you coming in and saying, oh, my ankle hurts, it's like, great, we'll make your ankle feel better. And then they just go watch more TV. It's like, that doesn't really get us excited. What gets us excited is, oh, I'm gonna go hike Half Dome in Yosemite. It's like, well, that's awesome. I've never done that. I would love to do that. I'm gonna live vicariously through you by working on your ankle. So your ankle is gonna be my happiness, my road in towards helping you to achieve your daring adventure, and we'll kind of do that together. So it becomes a two-way street of inspiration. So it's kind of selfish in one respect too, because whenever I can contribute to somebody else's happiness through chiropractic and in the work that we do, it also contributes back to my happiness, which I can then share with my family. And when I share my happiness with my family, they reflect back the happiness to me. And it just kind of grows, and you have this wonderful community of people that are all very positive focused. And when you do run across a time when you're not as happy as you could be, it helps to kind of buoy you and kind of pick you back up again and put you back on that track of happiness. So that's it's really kind of grown for me in a lot. And I think your perspective is actually, we've known each other for several years now, and I'd say my perspective has really grown based on what you've kind of taught me about all of this constellation and how it's much more complex and intricate than I think a lot of people will oftentimes give credit for.
Yeah, God, you just gave me so many notes there. You always do this. This is why the very first time and you guys can probably hear Dr. Ken. He's so inspirational to be around, and I think that's another part of it too, is that happiness is also bred from our surroundings and who we choose to surround ourselves with. And if you're around people who are getting up off the couch and they're like, oh God, my back, I'm old. I mean, you're probably going to echo the same sentiment when you get up off the couch after watching the average 5 hours of TV a day. I always like to say, I don't own a TV. I don't watch TV. I haven't for 6 years. I like to make my own TV shows by living that life. Like you said, like the daring adventure. So the way that I found you is through my pain. So I would love to talk about pain as a blessing, because the patients of yours that I've worked with and their nutritional analysis, and that being a rarity, I think, in chiropractic care from, I think the chiropractors, so you guys know, are, I think, in my opinion, the most holistic of doctors. And, the FDA is trying to push their freedom. And I think that's one of this is one of the sad movements that I think that we really need to look at. Okay, well, this is an awareness thing. It all can be looked at with a silver lining, and because chiropractors are making a difference. And I don't think every chiropractor sees the whole big picture, which that's something that you're unique to. And when I started coming to you with my pain, I had a goal, I had a dream, I wanted to be able to X. And now I'm 37, I'm still playing soccer. And that's largely in part thanks to you. It's reducing the inflammation, listening to my body, the whole staff that you have there. If you look at like your Yelp reviews, I mean, you got probably the best Yelp reviews I've ever seen of any chiropractors. And that's because of the totality of how you treat. So it's sad to me to see the intake forms of some of the patients that I've worked with of ours, who say, I just want to get out of pain. And that's like, that's not a goal. That is your nightmare being bigger than your dream. And you're reversing it, saying your dream has to be bigger than your nightmare. If this is gone, then what? And so there's this codependent relationship of pain where sometimes people identify so much with it that if they let that go, they lose a part of themselves. So let's speak to those two parts. Pain is a blessing, but pain can also be identity.
I absolutely love that. Your nightmare is bigger than your dream. And that's unfortunately, I think, the world that a lot of us live in. And I've been kind of very blessed with a number of, I guess, failures of my own that have allowed me to kind of, become more introspective and figure out what I can do to kind of improve upon. So I like that silver lining and being able to have the pain be a blessing. And what you find is I kind of see pain as, it's really like the last step in a chain. You'll start with there's a small change in kind of how your body operates. It will just be a minor dysfunction. It's not moving. It's kind of like the hinge on the door is just a little bit misaligned. Every time you open and close it, it still works perfectly fine. It still lets you go in and out of the room without any issue. But it maybe rubs against the carpet just a little bit. And if you just use it every so often, it's not really rubbing the carpet that often. It might be 15 years before you've had enough rubbing back and forth on the carpet that it actually causes like a little bald spot in the carpet to form, or maybe a scoring of the door frame. But what you'll find is that if you then were to do that same dysfunction and repeat it a number of times, let's say you become I'm going to start training for a marathon. So then you have this repetitive motion going over and over and over again with this very minor dysfunction. It starts to actually cause a lot of damage in our body. That damage manifests itself as inflammation. And that's why when you held up the bottle of Advil, that's such a huge part of daily life now, is people taking Advil to fight the inflammation. The really scary part about that is that inflammation is actually it's the source of healing. You can't heal without inflammation. When you block the inflammation, you're actually blocking the healing process. So you have this issue where your body is damaging itself, and you have this inflammation that's trying to heal itself, and then you're stopping that. And then what ends up happening, you just kind of keep going in this in this process where you just kind of manage your pain, or you can probably completely eliminate it in those early stages with your ibuprofen, your Advil, that kind of thing. But then it progressively gets worse. The dysfunction gets worse. You're not healing from day to day. You're actually now progressively getting more damage and more inflammation, more damage, more scar tissue formation, because unfortunately, one of the things that happens with inflammation, with enough of it, is that scar tissue will form, which then impedes your performance, which causes more dysfunction. And then you start to actually adapt to that and start to work in ways to make up for this dysfunction. And that tends to create other dysfunctions. It just keeps going and going until you get to a point where the pain is happening so consistently that you can no longer ignore it and you can no longer cover it up. So that's where you get kind of your blessing, is that you then have to speak with somebody that knows something about this. So it drives you to talk to a friend of yours that's dealt with this, or it drives you to a chiropractor, or it drives you to an acupuncturist, it drives you to somebody that would be able to deal with your pain. And if you find the right professional that matches up with the right condition, you hopefully have that aha moment going where I was ignoring this, or I can't believe I was treating this in the way that I was. This was really crazy, stupid of me. I shouldn't have been doing that. I should have been doing X. And hopefully that professional guides you through that. And then if you're open to that, you'll oftentimes, your life will change from that point forward. Sometimes it's not on the first time. I'll oftentimes see people will have the aha, but the aha goes away as soon as the pain goes away. Then they'll go through the process again months later. Then they'll have the aha a second time until the pain goes away. And then then they'll have the third aha. And it'll be pretty funny because it seems like it comes in threes. It'll a lot of times be the third time the patient will come in. This might be a couple years after their first experience with the pain and the relief of getting that pain gone with chiropractic, or obviously in my experience with chiropractic. And then they'll come to me, and then it'll be the third time. It'll be a long time later. This guy, you know what? I was thinking, Dr. Ken, that if I just did this and this, then I wouldn't have this problem anymore, and it wouldn't come back, and my life would be better. And I go, wow, that is brilliant. Where did you come up with that? Obviously, I told them that a year and a half earlier, but they have to come to it on their own. And it's and when they do, so it's a lot of times disregard. It's not just, you can't just be that professor telling people this is what you do. The dad that says, don't make my mistakes, do these things instead. It becomes, they have to kind of organically discover it themselves. And oftentimes that means hearing it from different sources, not just from me, but they'll also hear it from a spouse, or from a friend, or from another doctor, or from another therapist. Somewhere it's like all of a sudden this constellation of information is coming in, all pointing in the same direction. So when you talk about the pain, it's the pain being a blessing. I would see it as more, the pain is kind of the driver for them to seek out and find and secure their own blessing. Because I don't think the blessing is just going to fall in your lap. The change happens, your life improves, your happiness improves through the action, through you committing to some form of a change. And that's not just going to fall in your lap and all of a sudden your brain is different. All of a sudden your function is different. All of a sudden your happiness is different. It's not going to work that way. You have to actually make a concerted effort to do that. But the pain can become the wake up call, kind of like the smoke alarm. It's like, okay, you got this little bit of smoke. It's not setting up smoke alarm. You can sleep through it. You're not going to asphyxiate and die. But as the fire grows more intensely, if you don't have something that jars you awake and forces you to take action, you're going to have a pretty negative experience. So it does become kind of that a major driving force. I don't think many people would ever say that pain is a blessing, but I think pain can become the driver that allows you to seek out and make the changes to kind of create your own blessing. And I like that idea. I'm not, I think fate and things like that are interesting concepts, but I like the idea of being in control of my own destiny. That's why I like the daring adventure. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. I mean, Helen Keller, of all people, to have a positive attitude about making change in her own life when she was missing two of the most important senses that all of us rely on so much and take for granted. I think that's just incredible to think that even she would think that that's possible and do it in such a large and glorious way. I feel like we all want to be able to have that same feeling that we're in control of our own destiny, that we can make the steps to secure our own happiness, or whatever kind of works, whatever it is that we're shooting for to improve the quality of our life. Although I think happiness should be up there as one of the premier things that we're constantly shooting for. And I have to say, I kind of forgot what the second question was, because I'll
get to it. I'll segue because I took the whole notes anyway, so it's good. there's like a couple things that came up there for me, which is, I like to, on my intake form too, any time I'm working with our patients, is what would you do if the pain was gone? If the pain was not there, yeah, would you have reached your destiny? Is this your dream? If the pain is no longer there, what would you do with your life? And somehow one goal can turn into, oh, I'm still not happy because then something else doesn't happen. And so yeah, this is where I really want to get into the victimization and the neuroplasticity next. But there's a couple things that I wrote down here that are, I think, worth mentioning, is that, the analogy I like to use with the fire alarm, a smoke alarm, is like, damn, that thing is going off again. Hey, take the batteries out. Just shut that thing up. And that is the equivalent of, cortisone injections and, Advil. And I know cortisone injections is like, people are like, well, I'm so desperate, I don't know what else to do. And that's what they do. Yeah. And it's literally numbing the pain. And pain tells us to be present. Like this is what's happening with antidepressants. And I'm interviewing Dr. Dan Kalish on, the danger of antidepressants, and the codependency. And really what these wake-up calls are, I don't know if you've seen his TED Talk before, Dr. Ken, but I love this one. I've listened to it many times. I emailed him to see if he wanted to be interviewed for this. But they did studies, and they showed that there could be a number of things going on outside of us, and we're unhappy inside. But we're trying to seek happiness outside of ourselves because the story inside that we're telling ourselves is unhappy, so we're seeking it elsewhere. And we're not present in this moment. Even when you're experiencing and feeling pain, what they're saying, or if you're in traffic or something completely asininely annoying, and you're just going, I wish I was anywhere else but here. If you're daydreaming about being on a beach in Bali and you're in traffic, or you're in pain, let's say you're home and you're in pain and you can't get out of bed, your back hurts, being present is registering more happiness and neurotransmitters in the brain than daydreaming about being somewhere else that is pleasant. And I found that to be really, really, first of all, I found it like, how could they measure that stuff? But then there's, neuro pathway brain waves they could probably measure for neurotransmitter activity. But if we just stopped and actually got to the root of the pain and resolved it and worked on that and just continue to listen, like maybe I'm stuck in my own victim patterns, the neuroplasticity, maybe my own mindset and being everywhere else but right here is what's causing this. So that's the victim mindset that I wanted to get into next, instead of being like a reversing pain warrior versus being, this victim of circumstances that we can't get out of.
I agree with that. That actually kind of reminds me of a story that I kind of learned from another one of my mentors, Dr. Chow, a chiropractor I worked with for a number of years. And I remember one time, this was back when I first was out of chiropractic school, and I would actually go to, this is going to sound so crazy, I'd actually go to hair salons, and there'd be kind of like you have these kind of captive audience where they're sitting there, they're getting their hair dry. I don't know, still to this day, I don't even know what's happening under those little dryer things. I guess it's drying or it's colored something or other. And then we're getting abducted. Oh yeah, I would do like a shoulder massage type of thing. You just kind of introduce myself around, kind of in the area, so people know that I was around. I had no patients at all. I had tons of time on my hands, and then no budget for marketing. And I remember meeting this lady one time that was telling me about a problem that she was having, and I said, even right out of school with not the most amazing skills yet, I knew exactly what her problem was. I knew exactly how to fix it, and it's something she'd been suffering with for a number of years. And it was kind of mind blowing to me just how she hadn't found a solution yet. And she told me all the different doctors she'd gone to, and it had no relief. And I was 100% convinced to do it. And it was one of those things where I was so confident that I could help her that I'd say, you would know the very first visit if it's the right fit. Like, you will see improvement the very first visit. I totally know this. And at the end of all of that, I said, okay, great. She's going to come in. She's going to be one of my very first patients. And she says, no thanks. And I was kind of blown away. I didn't understand why that would be. And I was a little upset. And I figured it was basically a personal knock against me. It's like, okay, yeah, great. You're saying all these wonderful things, but I don't care to do it with you. I just don't trust you. So I went and I mentioned that to my mentor. And he said, and he asked me a few questions because he'd seen this kind of thing before. And as we were getting into it, we came to the conclusion that as I kind of went into kind of her history, because I learned a lot about her at that time, that there was certain circumstances, there were certain things that she would say that indicated that she kind of always had a problem of some kind, and that she got some secondary benefits from that problem. She was always saying that's like, oh, I'm so sorry you can't do that. Let me do that for you because of this pain that you have, because of this problem. Oh, it's okay that you haven't succeeded at that thing because you've got this pain that's interfering with that. So it's not your fault, it's the pain's fault. And it was, and as I kind of went, and I kind of thought back on my conversation with her, almost the entire thing was that. And then what he called that was basically she's getting secondary benefit from her pain. And then if that pain were to go away, she would no longer have an excuse. She'd no longer have pain as an excuse as to why she couldn't succeed at the things that she wanted, or she'd actually have to step up and take care of these things on her own rather than having other people take care of her. So there was kind of it's almost like a codependency, but it's codependency with an inanimate object. It's codependency with pain. Like she needs the pain, in order to justify her existence at the way it was, and the pain kind of needs her to stay alive. So she, in a way, I don't think she consciously was aware of this, where she didn't want to get better, but subconsciously, very powerfully, she wanted to be in that victim role. She wanted to have this pain. She did not want to get better. And over the years, I've seen other cases like that, and I recognized them right away. And I've learned to not address it from the let's make the pain go away perspective. I have to address it from the what benefits are you getting currently from the problem? How can we replace those benefits with you being an out of pain person rather than an in pain person with those same secondary benefits? And it's becomes more of a kind of almost more of a psychological fix, which is fascinating to me, because it's not something that ever really occurred to me until my mentor had brought that to my attention.
But that would require an admission on their end that they have an illness identity.
Not necessarily, because what you have, all you have to do is focus on. In that case, they tend to be very superficially driven. They're basically, their entire lives are being driven by a symptom, a pain. And in those cases, they tend to be very much in almost like a fight or flight, animalistic type of reaction. Everything is very, I guess you could say, instinctive rather than something they're thinking through. It's not intellectualized, it's very instinctive. So in cases like that, you can actually play to those same instincts and say, and if you don't ask them what secondary benefits you're getting from the pain, you get that from their story. But then you say, it's like, if we could make that pain go away, that benefit you currently think you have with the pain, we can actually replace that with something else. We can replace that with something that's stronger. Kind of like with you, we can exchange the nightmare for the dream, but right now the nightmare is bigger and more powerful and more overwhelming. You kind of say, okay, why are you actually liking the nightmare? Let's shift you from the nightmare over to the dream in just as powerful of a way, hopefully more powerful, to drive them across from one side to the other. So the victim mentality is, it's fortunately not something I see too often in my practice, but it is such a powerful one, because you can fall prey to it so easily. And once you've committed to that for a long enough period of time, kind of like we were talking about earlier with the plasticity, your attachment to that pain, your attachment to that symptom, your attachment to that loss of function becomes wired in your brain. It takes a long time for it to occur. It takes months to years for it to happen. But if you've committed yourself to accepting this pain, to accepting this limitation, it now becomes the new normal. It is now all you know. And then if I were to ask you what your 100% is, your 100% includes those limitations and includes those pains. You no longer even remember that you used to be considerably better than that. And those patients are interesting to work with, because when you do give them some improvement, they go, oh gosh, I'm now 100% better. It's like, well, are you as good as you were 2 years ago? Oh no, not even close. Well, then how could you be 100? It's like, okay, I guess I'm 95. Then you work with them, get some more improvement. They say, oh, now I'm 100. Are you as good as you were back 2 years ago? No, but I'm getting closer. Well, then you're not 100%. There's still more. And you keep going, and then you get them to where they were, and you get them beyond that. And now, but their minds can't wrap around the idea of 110% improvement, 120% improvement. So their 100%, their perception of what their 100% health is continues to change, continues to grow as they improve. And they don't necessarily know it, but it's funny to me to see, because they're almost kind of clueless. But it's not, and I kind of say that it's funny to see that. It's sad in a way as well, but it's all because our brains are trying to make us feel comfortable in our own skin. And it'd be horrible for us to constantly be reflecting on what we don't have. So that'd probably create some serious depression. Oh, I used to be able to do this, I can't, I'm depressed. I used to be able to do this, I can't, I'm depressed. That keeps spinning out of control. So your brain rewires itself to say that pain and that limitation is actually okay, that's normal. It's perfectly fine. And I've seen that so many times for some reason with headache patients. I'll have patients come in, and a lot of times they'll have maybe neck pain and things like that. And I've now just always asked, do you also suffer from headaches? And the answer I'll get a lot of, because they're so closely related, neck dysfunctions and headaches are very closely related and respond incredibly well to chiropractic in a lot of cases. But so I'll ask them, do you also have headaches? And they'll usually, and I'll get the answer, just the normal amount. And I go, okay, I didn't think headaches were normal. What's the normal amount? And then they a lot of times say, oh, like once or twice a week. And it just blows me away. I'm like, once or twice a week is normal? And then they'll go, yo, yeah, that's what all my coworkers say. They all have headaches once or twice a week, and that's normal, right? Because I'm just like them. I mean, I'm not exceptional. I'm just like everybody else around me. They go, that's not even close to normal. So there's a perception issue there as well. That's just been we've kind of become wired from a brain perspective, but we also become wired from a societal perspective. You see what's around you and you go, oh, that just must be the norm. It is incredibly common, but it is in no way normal. So it's important for people to recognize that. And I oftentimes won't even start with that. I won't, oh, maybe the pain shooting down your arm, let's work on that. But I'll plant the seed and I'll say, just pay attention to your headaches, because if it's related to your neck, you'll see improvement with the headaches. And then they'll very quick, when their neck pain and their arm pain is better, they almost forgot they ever had it, but they will remember that their headache is now better, and they're over the moon. They're just so thrilled with that. So it's interesting how our brains adapt to circumstances, either from feedback from our friends or coworkers or family, or just from regular old habit, having been in this pattern for so long. So it's really important for people to recognize that a lot of times what you are experiencing, and this goes back obviously to the happiness, your happiness level is probably very much wired by what you just expect your happiness to be. Oh, everyone else around me doesn't seem to be very happy. Oh, everyone else around me is getting divorced. Everyone else around me hates their boyfriend or their girlfriend or their spouse or their job or their kids or whatever it is. So therefore I probably should do that too, or I already am, so I must be normal. You go, no, it's not normal to be unhappy. It's normal to be happy. Think about what you are when you're first born. It's like when you're a young kid, they're like, everything makes them happy. It's like they're thrilled with the tiniest little thing. Look, it's a roly-poly. It's like, wow, that's amazing. It's like, it's a roly-poly. I've seen those a million times. That's not very exciting. It's exciting to them. You take it like it's a flower just blowing in the wind is like incredibly thrilling to them. So we're wired from the beginning to be happy all the time, and ecstatically happy, not just a little bit happy. So it's like we have to learn how to become sad, and a big part of that is that neuroplasticity, the rewiring of the brain, and just the expectations that we have. So the first thing you have to do is kind of set a goal to expect to be happier than you are. And I don't care how happy you are, there's probably almost always room for improvement, which takes me back to kind of Jack LaLanne, who is just the most amazing, kind of one of my absolute idols of all time when it comes to health and fitness. He lived to 96 years old, and I saw him interviewed on, I think it was David Letterman, when he was 94, and he had more energy and vitality and happiness, he and his wife both together, than it is at 94 than I've ever had probably my entire life. So it's just amazing to me. And he had that expectation. I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to have positive thoughts. I'm going to have a wonderful relationship with my spouse. And he had all of those things. And so to me, that's very good. It doesn't, whereas in our society, we very much go, oh, you're old. You should give up on doing stuff. You should give up on being happy. You should just settle for this or settle for that. And unfortunately, the idea of old is becoming younger and younger rather than older and older. So now we're going like, oh, I'm 40. Oh, I'm 30. Oh, it just keeps working out. Eventually, it's going to be like, oh, I just turned 18. My life is over. That's not the right trend. The trend needs to be an expectation that we're going to be at the highest levels of happiness and health. And I kind of feel all three should be kind of better: health, happiness, and prosperity. They all factor one into another. And those all need to be at the highest possible levels. And making an effort to do so on a regular basis is why we're here. It's like, why else be here if you're gonna be sad? It's just kind of silly. You could have incredible health, you can have wonderful prosperity, but if you're not happy, like why have the health? Just go be sad and unhealthy. You'll probably be happier eating unhealthy food
because you're living your truth.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
you're living your
happier
mood.
being, exactly. You'll be happier being not prosperous because you're not working as much. You can sit around and be your unhappy self more. So it's so they all really go close. They go hand in hand. And I very much like that concept and the idea that we can influence that change. And we know this with the brain research is very powerful on this. The brain rewiring happens a lot faster when we're younger. So that's why, kids can learn multiple languages from a very early age, but that rewiring continues to happen. We actually still grow brain cells in certain parts of our brains. I believe it's the red nucleus, if I'm not mistaken, even like later in life, where we didn't think that was, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we didn't think that was possible. So the brain is constantly growing and evolving and rewiring based on our habit patterns. If you have a good habit pattern, then it's going to continue to improve to match that. If you have a bad habit pattern, it's going to continue to move to match that in a negative way. And that's where it's like habit. It's like the habit of being happy.
Yes. That reminds me of what I asked myself recently was, when was the last time I remember being exceptionally happy where nothing can really take me down? And in my mind, it was when I used to draw unicorns and play with unicorns and brush my little ponies. And I was like,
2 weeks ago?
It is current. You can probably see in the mirror my unicorn. And I have one right here. So to me, unicorns are,
that's why you're happy all the time. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not happy all the time. Chronic happiness is the guaranteed way to, to find depression. But no, I'm happy, much more happy now, I think, than I ever have been as an adult. And what's really interesting is that we get to see how we reflect back from others. We get to see what we're really throwing out there based on what we attract. And I used to, when I first started my nutrition business years ago, I was attracting kind of victim mindsets, which is why when you said, oh, I don't see many of those, I'm like, it's because you attract who you are. And then you also inspire hope in them so that they're not likely to complain as much because they're like, oh, no, I've got some hope here. And now what I notice that I'm just attracting happy people. And it's like, wow, this is really cool. And the things that are people that are not happy, or I wouldn't say chronically happy, because JP Sears and I talked about that. But people have a good attitude. They have the ability to rebound from, otherwise tough situations or the normalcy of depression of some kind, that it's normal to be depressed. So,
everyone's doing it. You should do it too.
Yeah, everyone's taking antidepressants, which is actually currently about 20% of the population. So listen to Dr. Dan Kazer in my interview about that. So I've been getting some feedback lately that they think that I've gone off the deep end with this whole unicorn thing. And I'm like, well, are you just not taking accountability for your happiness? Is it because you're seeing that I'm happy for me, it's like my superhero, and that makes me happy. I think going back to that time, whenever we have these thoughts, it's like, what age was I when I started saying that? What age was there trauma? And so I go back to when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, and I was just so happy. And so I'm playing to that little girl inside of me and bringing her back out. And the other times where my environment told me that I should be down on myself, or I should be doing more because it's not enough what I'm doing. I get to talk to that teenager. I get to talk to that 20-year-old. I get to talk to the 25-year-old. And I'm like, no, we got this, dude. We're on our unicorn and we're fine. We're creating magic. We're magically happy and what we're doing and where we're at. So it's okay. Thank you for trying to protect me, ego. So, and that's why I'm going to interview your son too. So you guys, Ethan Erickson, watch this interview too. He's an inspiring young entrepreneur. And just real quick, Dr. Ken, can you speak on that as a father? Because that'll segue into that to get people interested in watching that one too. So where did that all come from?
What part are you talking about?
The project and how that ties into his happiness. Because that's a part of what you wrote in the notes, is the prosperity piece and having a purpose and having, little landmarks towards success that makes us happy.
Very much so. Well, I think it's so I probably have to take a step back to go into that. to me, as we talked about, like, I feel like health, happiness, and prosperity are intrinsically linked. Like, you can't separate them. It's very hard to be happy if you're not healthy. It's very hard to be happy when you're not prosperous. It's very hard. You can definitely make your it's easier to be healthy, to eat healthy and live healthy if you're prosperous. You're also more inclined to be healthy when you're happy all the time, or happy a good portion of the time. So these things are all very closely tied together. And one of the things that we've done as a kind of a family is try to have as much of the kind of that combination, the health, the happiness, and the prosperity that we can. So several years ago, you know her very well as well, Shalene Johnson, introduced, and her husband Brett introduced us to the concept of what they call smart success. And basically to contrast it with stressed success, something where you work very hard, but you work and you have financial success. This is wonderful. Look at all this money that we have. But what you find is you wouldn't have the happiness, and you generally wouldn't have the time to be able to seek out more happiness, and you wouldn't generally have the time to spend on being healthy and those kinds of things as well. So it was one side of the equation. It was really kind of missing out on a lot of other parts. So several years ago, I want to say it was probably 5 years ago, we really committed, my wife and I did, to kind of moving away from that stress success, working kind of the almost like 7 days a week type of an idea. And we thought, okay, we'll kind of cut down on the time and see if we can still maintain a lifestyle that works for us, but also just have more passion, more purpose in our lives, and see if that would actually make us even happier. We were pretty happy at the time, but it was not. But there would be times when, and my wife works in the office with us. We work together on the practice, and there would be times when we kind of conflict because it would be stressful, and we just like, oh, like, we should be doing this, we should be doing that. We had this idea, this expectation of all these things we should be doing, and we were comparing ourselves to others, and it was not. It was very depressing. It wasn't very happiness inducing. So when we made that commitment, we actually I cut my schedule down to where I work 3 full days during the week and 1 half day on Saturday. And now I used to call Tuesdays, I still do, call them a Ticket to Prosperity Tuesday. So I would devote Tuesdays to working on projects that were just kind of prosperity inducing. You know, sometimes we'd focus on bringing in some money from a different source, but a lot of times it really became like passion projects, things that we just loved doing, kind of spreading our message out to the world and helping as many people as we could. It's nice being a chiropractor and getting these wonderful kind of miracle stories with patients one at a time in the office, but when it's one-on-one is somewhat limiting. Like, it's nice when you could do 1 on 10 or 1 on 100 or 1 on 1,000,000. So we've really kind of expanded that out and created a number of different things during that period of time. My wife and I both, together and separately, which is really nice. And then I found that as we became more efficient in how we work with our time, and that's what we basically figured out, was that our happiness was really determined not so much by how much money we had, but how much time we had. And then as long as we use that time wisely, that's really where so much of our happiness came from. Time with each other. So we do date nights every single week. And I mean, I don't care financially what happens, is like, we will not cut that out. I mean, I'll get rid of one of the cars before we'll get rid of our date nights. It's so important to our relationship and our happiness that's something that we've really kind of focused on. And then with that time, we were able to do a lot of things with our family as well, with our kids, and do it in a way that's, and we have to kind of, I'll be perfectly honest here, in some cases, parenting is not always this wonderful, amazing, perfect gem of a job. Sometimes it's really kind of a slog. So it's not, if you're not like imagine like when they're babies, like, oh, I don't think there's anybody that says, I love changing diapers, this is amazing. You know, you can take every stage along the way. There are challenges to it, but there are lots of things about parenting we love. And it's really the interaction with the kids and seeing how they perceive the world and and what's important to them and what makes them happy. That stuff we absolutely love. So we just spend more time kind of exploring what they kind of like and what they do, and doing the things that they enjoy, and teaching them about the things that are important to us. And some things that are important to us, like entrepreneurism, you know, being in control of your own destiny, things along those lines that are very important to us. So we took one of our kind of projects that we're working with, and we ended up, my son and I created a card game based on a computer game that we really like to play.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to get back real quick to the spine, and then we'll end on your 3 takeaways. So I can just hear people thinking, oh, well, you know, I bet Dr. Ken just gives his son Ethan the best chiropractic adjustments ever, and he gets adjusted like once a day, and that's why he's so brilliant and genius, and that's why he has courage. So that's really the ticket, right? Like, let's talk about Done. So let's talk about, as I'm sitting here with my thoracic spine kind of like hunched over, because, I'm sitting in a kneeling chair on my stand-up treadmill desk. But, the people's, if you're looking at it from the side, it's the forward neck, the turtleneck, I'm texting on my phone, I'm looking, I'm driving, I'm in front of a computer. So, that right there, that's our cervical spine that's right next to our brain. And the central nervous system is the freeway for all these nutrients to carry oxygen and stuff. And so people who, of course, a life without action is a life where you begin to ferment and die, but also a life having a spine that's in alignment, that we have the freeway. It's not like the 405 and the 5 at 5 o'clock p.m. traffic. It's actually an open 2 o'clock in the morning 405, where things are able to get to where they're supposed to be. So how can physically, structurally, spinally, people have a big roadblock to happiness, that kind of tying it back to what you said earlier with the story, but chemically and scientifically?
Definitely. And you make a great point to that, especially when you talk about the neck. The spine is fairly all-encompassing. It covers a large part of the body, obviously, and it houses every single nerve, and those nerves go to every single cell tissue of the body. But one of the most important parts of that is actually the uppermost part of the spine, where the brain stem actually extends from the brain into the spinal cord by about a couple vertebrae. It kind of comes down by a couple inches. And the brain stem is vitally important because it controls all of our autonomic functions: heart rate, breathing, digestion, hormone release. Pretty much anything you don't have to think about is controlled by the brain stem. And any irritation of the brain stem is going to alter your brain's perception of what's happening. So if your digestive system is saying, hey, things are moving too slow here, can you help speed things up? Can you put some water in my intestines to move things through? The brain is not going to get that signal in quite the same way, and it's not going to respond as nimbly as it normally would and kind of adjust and have everything work right. So then all of a sudden now you have this system that's not working at its optimum, which is going to impact your health. So in that, you can imagine that with any system in the body, just about any cell or tissue in the body being altered by this one region of the spine being irritated. And that's actually why the original chiropractors, going back to 1895, focused almost entirely on what they called the upper cervical region. They actually had practitioners. That's all they did. They just worked on the upper cervical, the upper neck part of the spine, and they would influence all kinds of different bodily functions. So it's that's very much a big part of that. And we're seeing so much more irritation of that because of our devices, our handheld devices. I oftentimes say computers and cars are the two most evil things that have ever been developed for our spines. And when you throw in mobile devices in there, like our phones, it really just magnifies that considerably. The curvature of the spine, there's supposed to be a curvature when you view the spine from the side, and that curvature is kind of a shock absorber. So that when you have force coming down, like the weight of the head, or if you're running and you're kind of bouncing up and down on the ground, that shock is absorbed by the curvature. But when we have this, what we call forward head carriage or forward head posture, the shoulders roll forward, you lose the curvature of your neck, and then now you get this jackhammer effect, where everything that comes down onto it is not absorbing the shock or absorbing the weight of the head. It's actually transferring those things. It tends to transfer them down to kind of the upper back, the mid back, and things like that. And it tends to irritate the discs and the nerves, which then just kind of creates this cascade effect that can affect our health in a lot of ways. So it's very important that we kind of maintain a lot of that function. And what you'll find is, when we're talking about kind of the pain and the happiness, is that the brain doesn't specifically know the difference between, it understands pain and it responds to that very clearly. But any kind of sensation or impulse coming from the body that's not normal, even if it's not pain, is still processed in a way that's very similar to pain. It tends to interfere with overall function. I think you probably get a kick out of this study. It's a very scary, actually, study. But what they actually found was they studied chronic low back pain sufferers, people that would actually have low back pain 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And in this particular study, they'd followed them over an entire year. And they compared them to people that had no low back pain. And what they did is they actually measured their brain mass. They measured their brain mass at the beginning of the study, and they measured their brain mass at intervals throughout an entire year during this study. And what they actually found was that the mass of the brain actually decreased, in the amount of decrease that the actual brain mass reduced was equal to what was equivalent to 10 years of natural aging. So
Whoa.
basically our brains, unfortunately, if we don't stimulate them and things like that, will kind of shrink over time. And the 10 years of natural aging, that amount of brain mass loss, was the same amount that these chronic low back pain sufferers experienced in 1 year. So, and the way the researchers explain this is why this happened was that you can imagine if we're talking on the phone, and you can have like a normal conversation, like you talk, I talk. There's this great line of communication. There's not a lot of static on the line. Everything's working fine. The phone is very functional to us. We can use it as a tool to communicate. But what if there's a screeching on the line, which is like pain, and it's constant. It's 24/7. Every time you pick up the phone and you dial out, you've got this screeching that's happening across the line. So it's very hard for me to understand you. It's hard for you to understand me. And it kind of gives you a headache because you're listening to this screech on the phone line. And basically the phone becomes kind of worthless to us. So you just start using the phone less and less until eventually you just give up the phone altogether. And that's actually what's happening. It's actually it's like atrophy of a muscle. It's creating an atrophy of the brain, where the brain is actually shrinking because these screeching pain signals are going to parts of the brain that are just overwhelming it. And they're saying, all I get is a screeching signal. I'm not getting any kind of useful information. I'm just gonna stop listening. I'm gonna stop listening to your body. And you get actually, and that part of the brain says, well, I don't have anything to do anymore. So it starts to just atrophy and shrink and go away. And that's all moderated by the pain impulses, and it's moderated by the spinal cord. And the spinal cord is really, we tend to separate the brain and the spinal cord. They're not separated. The body sees them as one complete functional unit. When you look at them, they are a complete functional unit. One's just an extension of the other. It's very important to make sure that these impulses are correct and that they're not interfering with normal function. So the longer you let pain interfere with your function, and the longer you have pain kind of inundating, like screaming at your brain, the more likely it is that you're going to rewire it in a really bad way. You're going to atrophy that part of the brain. So it's when you take all those things together, just the bad postures and dysfunctions of the spine, dysfunctions of parts external to the spine, knees and hips and elbows and wrists, all those kinds of things, it's sending all these impulses back up, and it's basically going to cause your body to adapt in a way that is not healthy, and it is going to dramatically affect your happiness as well, because of all these changes that occur kind of in the brain and just your perception of what normal is, and it just continues to work its way downhill. So I don't know if that totally answers your question, but I think that's a kind of an important point for people to realize.
That's huge. And of course, I'm sitting here going, well, I've struggled with lower back pain since I was like 17. And it's like, oh, well, you have scoliosis and you have herniated discs because it's your movement patterns. And I've had Ayurvedic practitioners in India and, yogis tell me it's because I have repressed emotions that are in my, yellow third chakra, which is something that I need to work on from childhood. It's like all these different, and that's where this totalitarianism of happiness came from for me, is that this back pain for me has been like, I always ask people with health, is like, if I could wave one magic wand and fix one thing, what would it be that is like your biggest nightmare? And for me, it is my lower back pain, and it's my and you hear me identifying with it. It's my lower back pain. It's my inflammation. And people probably are surprised because of what one would see on an x-ray. Oh, those are big herniations. I don't take any of these pain medications because I work, I move, I do yoga, I go see you. And I see you, not like an intensive care unit. I go see you, Dr. Ken. But I hear, playing devil's advocate, that study, if there's static on the line, if I just take this Advil, wouldn't that just reduce the noise and henceforth help with that brain deterioration?
That's a great question. I don't know if they actually included that as part of the study. So I'd just be speculating on that one. Right. But I think there probably could be something to that. However, it still comes down to, well, let's see. I think if you're decreasing the inflammation, you probably actually are decreasing the amount of impulses being sent to the brain. So that could very well free it up to where it can kind of sense other things. But I'm not 100% sure on that one. That's a great question. Yeah, I know they've actually reproduced the study a couple times in different parts of the body. I believe they did one study that was very similar to it regarding headaches as well, and that was and they came up with a very similar type result. But headaches are a little bit different because very rarely do people have 24-hour a day, 7 day a week kind of headaches. But the low back pain, unfortunately, is a common one for them to use as a study group.
Right. And of course, the first thing I would think is reduce inflammation first with an anti-inflammatory diet, lots of turmeric, ginger, garlic, eating lots of greens and not such a high meat, high acidic, high caffeine, high alcohol, high wheat grains diet. So that's like the first step in terms of, and that's why we work together so well. It's like, okay, I can adjust you and there's only so much I could do with this, but then the lifestyle will continue to perpetuate the problem and continue to bring you back to misalignment. So there's 3 parts to the neck, and I people don't realize this, but cervical is connected to the thyroid, and so if the cervical spine is off, then we've got metabolism issues and we can't lose weight. And then you've got the thoracic spine, which is closely related to kidneys and liver and gallbladder, and if that's congested, then we've got lots of problems with detoxification, the toxins back up, and that can make you unhappy. I've been there before too. And then the lumbar has a lot to do with digestion as well, but also has a lot to do with procreation and sex and sex hormones and the enjoyment of sex. And I deal with so many women, Dr. Ken, who say, I have very painful sex, and they can't have sex. And then sometimes marriages end because of that very factor, because someone's going to need it somewhere else. So, those are all major roadblocks to unhappiness. And I'm sure that over your years of doing this, you've seen a lot of people liberated from the congestion in their spine. So they were able to step into their dreams. And that's exactly what we started with, is that this could be one roadblock of many. But as you can hear Dr. Ken speak, there's so many parts to this. And I love the health, happiness, and prosperity piece. You and I could always go off forever. So if you can succinctly, in like 2 minutes or less, summarize everything we talked about today that people can take away and start doing now. Like, it's not one of those hard things, like, okay, you're going to have to go to, Bali or India to do these things. Like, what can they start doing now that they can slowly incorporate into their lives to pave a better path to happiness, or at least more happiness and better resiliency toward happiness?
Got it. So if you're talking about the physical impacts on happiness, I would say it's really kind of a spectrum. It goes from pain is such an obvious one that interferes with our happiness, but then you also have a lack of being your best, which I call kind of a loss of performance, is another way that can interfere with your happiness. And then the plasticity. And the plasticity based on neuroplasticity, where the brain itself will reshape itself based on the habits that it finds itself in. So if you're finding yourself with negative thoughts, your brain is going to wire itself to notice negative thoughts more than positive thoughts. And it's going to kind of continue to feed on itself. So what you find, so I would say, obviously, whichever one of those spectrum you're on, hopefully none of them, but if you're on any of them, you need to address those right away, not let them go from one into the other. Don't let your pain exist for so long with the inflammation, where it turns into scar tissue, where it actually starts to create an anatomical interference with your function, with your performance, so that then that performance becomes a reason that you can't say, oh, I can no longer do this, so I have to give up on something. So now you're mentally giving up, and you're giving up on happiness because you're giving up on something that makes you happy. You don't ever want to give up on anything that makes you happy, because that's one less thing that you can use as a tool to ramp up your happiness when you want to. And if you let that performance stay reduced for a long enough period of time, your brain will expect that to be the new normal. At first you fight it and go, oh, I used to be able to do this, isn't that sad? Oh, I used to be able to do this, isn't that sad? You keep doing that over and over again, and eventually you'll go, oh, I can't do this, and you just accept it. And that's even worse, because when you try to then break out of that by breaking the neuroplasticity, the negative neuroplasticity, you're going to it's going to be very difficult to do that. It's like once you built up a wall around yourself, it's very difficult to break through that wall again. So don't let that wall ever build up. So I'd say if you're at any one of those stages, stop, assess it, and then try to do anything in your power to reverse that, whether it's going to be through chiropractic care, or whether it's going to be through yoga or Pilates, or adding more movement into your regular daily life, or even just taking the time to moving away from your stressed success and move more towards doing that smart success, where you actually have the time to devote to your happiness. Maybe that's part of the issue that's kind of happening as well. So that would be kind of my relatively brief, although I'm not a very brief talker, as you probably noticed, summary of what we've kind of covered today.
I always like how you pull that back into the stress success versus the smart success, because, and that is that Shalene's way of saying it. It
very much is, and that's been very much a hallmark that became kind of the spark that allowed so much of the wonderful things that have happened to us in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
It really started there. And that was just that one piece of the puzzle that was kind of missing. We had these other parts that were working well, but they weren't integrated fully. But once we had the time to devote to this stuff that we were passionate about, it just all of a sudden the happiness just came in a rush. It was fantastic. And we're still doing that. We're still kind of reinventing that. We're still finding new ways to tweak it, like with Ethan's project, for instance, that just is even more, happiness inducing. So that just the more little tools you have, the more little levers you can pull to kind of ramp up that happiness, the better, rather than just having one. And when that one goes away, all of a sudden now I'm sad. It's like, I've got this, like, oh, my dog died and that was my whole life. Like, okay, well, I guess I'm sad now. It's like, no, you've got this, you've got that, and you've got the wife and the kids, and you love your job, and you've got things outside of your job that you love, and you've got these the sport that you do, and these activities and these friends, and it's that you have all of them. If one or two or three of them goes away, you're bummed for a short period of time, but then you just pivot right back to those other ones that are still there and still firing and also on all cylinders and still making you happy. So you just want to have just have that garden full of a variety of happinesses, so you can kind of go to them at different times when you need them.
I love what earlier when you said passion projects, because it really truly, that's what entrepreneurship is to me. And I've been doing the same thing as you lately. And literally this week is I'm carving out a week of every month where I see no patients, I see no clients, and it's just my open week to explore. And yesterday I went and sat on the beach, and of course I read a book on liver and gallbladder flush. And then the other one I read was,
for you.
I know, I'm creating like this new lymph detox product, which is, a big part of why we have so many diseases today. So when the lymph backs up, then we've got cholesterol and triglycerides and other problematic things like uric acid in the blood. And so when we're getting to those roots, then it's a lot easier to recover from bacteria that we have instead of having to rely on all these crazy vaccinations. But I also read another book, and keeping it diverse, on attracting the love that I want in my life. Because as I always talk to you about, I adore your and Daly's relationship and your family dynamic, and the fact that you guys do see time as more of a valuable asset than money. And so my version of keeping up with the Kardashians is trying to be more like you, because it's like, you guys are a great icon of family that I want to one day have. And so it's like, I didn't even realize this, but one of the people that I'm interviewing, and you guys will get to either see this or if you haven't already, but Renee Payan, and or Piani is how you pronounce it. And she is someone who wrote a book and is a leader in Los Angeles, has been for many years, about if you really want something, you actually have to set intentions and habits to go after that too. And I wasn't creating habits toward love. And I'm like, I'm so busy. I love my job. It's not really a job to me. It's like my passion project. But just like with anything in life, we have to set intentions for those things to happen. They won't just come to us, like what you said, to echo the sentiment earlier. And when we have that space, then we're able to, open up into creativity and vulnerability. And like your patient in the very first part of this call, vulnerability breeds creativity, and creativity breeds happiness. And you can say confidence. And it's crazy when I think about Ethan and the future of children today, 75% of jobs today will be gone in the next 2 or 3 decades is the estimate, because robots can do them. So happiness is our destiny, and it's in our hands. And this is where when people say that happiness is a choice, I think that you pretty much summed it up in this entire call with all of the things and bringing together the constellation, because these things don't just fall into our doorstep. And that's the victim mindset. So if you're watching this, you're probably not the victim type, you're the victor type. You really want to, which is the name of your front desk receptionist, of course, which is funny. But so it's, to round out every single thing that you said, I think to summarize it is that you get to make your choice. And the key points we're going to have summarized on the side. If this talk touched you in any way, share it with your friends. Dr. Ken also will have links on the side too. He's got a program that helps you work through the scar tissue in your body. So on the physical end, it's peak performance based. So if you want to be a better athlete, a better person, if you want to get rid of your pain, but again, you have to focus on more the dream than your nightmare. He's got an amazing program for that. I've been watching a lot of videos. And of course, there's a reason I keep going back to him, because I trust him and because I really believe that he wants wants what's best for me. So that's a big part of it too, of your happiness, is making sure that you have people around you who want what's best for you truly, regardless of what that is. It's not their control. It's about them going, hey, I relinquish to whatever path that you want to take to find your happiness, because everybody is different, and I can appreciate that, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So cool. Okay, Dr. Ken, any final closing thoughts before we wrap up?
I think we covered it. It's every time we talk, it's always, I learn a whole bunch, and I've learned a bunch already today. And I just really enjoy kind of how you see the world, and your passion for helping other people. And the work you've done with our patients is just phenomenal. I get feedback on that on a constant basis. It's wonderful. So we're so blessed to have you in our life. And thank you very much for having me here. I'd like to be able to contribute in any way I can to your passion project of helping others.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Ken. Heart to Happiness, you guys, and make sure that you come back for my interview with Ethan and Dr. Ken. You heard a little bit of planting of the seed today. So Dr. Ken, have an amazing, happy, prosperous, healthy day.
Thank you much. You too.